And great. Do we have some numbers or any kind of ideas of how many people in tech businesses versus other types of businesses?
It seems like a lot of tech or consulting behind software companies for
Okay.
most of it. Thrive does get its fair share of like, uh, I run a blue collar construction company, but I think it's a lot more rare.
Okay, great. Because I mean, product market fit is a topic. Everything I'm going to be talking about applies to all types of businesses, but I put a focus on software
Right.
simply because it's just that's where I play. And but everything I'm going to be talking about, I was just wondering how much should I highlight? Like you can, no matter what business you're in, this is relevant to you. Same thing.
Yep.
Same thing applies.
Yep. Absolutely. Robin, good to see you.
Hey,
Well, hope people is
and
joining
I
that
have
I'm working.
share abilities as well.
Yeah. Does it work?
Let me try that. Let me just put it on, let me put my computer on do not disturb.
Cool. You should be good.
Um, where Zoom. Okay, let me try share. Yep, it does work.
Cool. Perfect. Well, um, I am going to go ahead and start letting the rest of the people in, but I'll man the waiting room, Nelly, and let people in as they come in. We're recording as well. So yeah, Robin, Cody, Lexi, appreciate you jumping on. We asked Nelly to come on today and talk about getting to and achieving product market fit faster. We haven't done a session like on this topic before, but she was just talking about a lot of companies in Thrive are early stage and coming to market and trying to figure that out. It's a pretty important time in business. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to her and let her run the show today. So Nelly, over to you.
Okay. Hey guys, thank you for joining. I'm gonna share my screen. Um, okay. Uh, uh, Eric, do you want me to just maybe interact with Robin and Lewis and Alexi? Can you maybe talk very briefly since we're waiting for a couple more people, what types of businesses you're in? And then we'll dive in. Just
Sure, I'll go
Alexi, why don't you go first, then Robin, then Cody.
for sure. Yeah, I'm working in software, so building a product analytics platform that consolidates both your product and subscription data to provide more impactful insights. Um, yeah, particularly interesting topic because I'm trying to help founders who are working on product market fit.
Okay, great. And Robin.
I have a B2B SaaS company that helps lawyers review and negotiate contracts, and I'm still trying to land my first customer.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Cody.
I do video production for companies, for the talent brands or internal communications, that sort of thing.
Okay. Great. And Matthew, you're here. I'm going to put you on the spot. Do a quick intro on on what type of business you're running.
Sure. Yeah. It seems like I joined just in time. Yeah, I'm doing technology consulting for small and medium businesses. Um, Focusing now, still refining my sort of niche, my offering, but data services and kind of workflow automation.
Okay, great. That helps me a lot. And as we're going, since we're a smaller group, you guys can just jump in or I have the chat open. Let me actually push it out of the. Okay, I have the chat here helping me keep an eye on the screen. And so we'll, I'll if you have questions, just type them in and I can address them real time. Okay. All right. So my goal here today is to show you the how to get to product market fit quickly and a path to successfully getting there. I actually prepared a workbook for this because, and I'm going to drop the link in the chat for you. I should have done that sooner. There's going to be a ton of information that I'm going to share, so don't feel like you have to take notes. That's why the workbook is there. Go download it, and like there's a summary of everything I'm going to talk about, but I want you to kind of pay attention and focus and be here present. Okay, so quick introduction. I'm a CTO, startup tech advisor, and creator of Tech Speak for Entrepreneurs, which is an online program where I teach the most efficient ways to manage tech teams and projects. Everything I'm going to teach you is going to be from personal experience of being a fractional CTO for lots and lots of different startups. I developed this process after making a lot of mistakes, very expensive mistakes, and realized that there's a better way to do things. And so over many years, I made progress with teams and managing teams and projects of different sizes and types, and developed this process that I'm going to be teaching you today as well, called Tech Speak, that I eventually turned it into a product and a course. I've taught this process to 1,200 students plus, worked with lots of startups, early stage, and everything. Again, I'm going to be teaching you today is not theory. It's practical stuff that hopefully you'll take action on after this. So very quickly, what are we going to cover today? First, I want to define what's product market fit. And because I think a lot of people, even with the definition of what it is, right, have a lot of questions. And once we understand and are on the same page, we're going to talk about why reaching this milestone is so important, 2 pillars that are necessary for reaching product market fit quickly. Then I will share the framework with you that I personally use that you can hopefully use as well. And we'll talk about the role of metrics to help prevent you from going in the wrong direction for too long. And then I'll share additional resources with you. And we'll go into the live Q&A for the remainder of the session. Okay, so what is product market fit? There's obviously the product side, there's the market side. On the market side, you're going to try to achieve 3 things. First, you need to identify the exact early adopter customer who has the biggest pain point for what you try to solve. So if you want to service everyone in the early days, that's a big, big mistake. You want to be able to find that early adopter customer who has the biggest pain point. And then the second thing is that you need to validate that the customer problem is not just valid, but it's also high enough that customers are going to be willing to pay you with time or money, and ideally both, to solve those problems. The key here and the goal is to find out that people are willing to pay you with either time or money or both. And when I work with entrepreneurs and companies as a consultant or advisor, what I see a lot of entrepreneurs do is solve level 5 or 6 problems. And when you do the market side well, what I'm suggesting that you do is you find level 12 out of 10 problems. These are painkiller problems that people actually need solved, because the higher the pain point, the more likely customers will be willing to pay you with time or money, and ideally both. So let me ask you a question. Let's say you found a painkiller problem that people need solved, but you don't have a customer that is willing to pay you to solve that problem. Do you have a business? Type your answer in the chat, yes or no. High problem, not a customer that's willing to pay you to solve that problem. Is there a business here? No, not yet, right? But a lot of people function this way. So you may have a non-for-profit, a hobby that you're funding yourself, a very expensive hobby, but you don't have a business until you find someone, anyone, even if it's not directly your users of the product. You need to be able to find someone who will be willing to pay you for it, and then you can call yourself a business. Right? Then finally, you need to also define and refine your value proposition. So what does this mean? You need to answer questions like, what makes you unique? Why should people pick you over the competition? And are you clearly communicating the value to your potential customers in a way that they resonate with? This is really, really important to get right. Again, even if you're able to create a product that solves a painkiller problem, if you're not able to communicate the value effectively, in a way that your customers understand, because you may understand the value, but your customers can't see the value, they're not buying, right? So all of these things on the market side is something that you need to continue to iterate as quickly as possible. Okay, so that's what you're trying to achieve on the market side. On the product side, these are the three things that you need to focus on. The first thing is obviously to build the features and functionalities that to solve the customer needs that you've identified on the product side. And the mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make and where they get stuck is that they build their first version of the product. They say, yay, they start celebrating, but the key is to continue to refine it until you have created a delightful product, right? You need to continue to find the exact combination of features and functionalities that will have your customers be happy. Yes, I said happy to pay you with time or money to be able to use your products and services. And think about yourself, right? When you have a really high pain point, if someone has figured out an efficient way to be able to solve that, you're willing to, you want them to exist, right? You're going to be upset if they go away. So that's what you want your product to become for someone. You want to be able to find that exact perfect combination. And sometimes that takes years, right, of iteration to be able to find something that is delightful. You also need to refine your product's user experience to make sure that your product is intuitive and is easy to use, because if it's not usable, if it's not easy, then people are not going to spend the time. Even sometimes when the problem is high enough, like if it's so bad, then the product is just not going to be used. But I saw something on LinkedIn yesterday where the guy was showing when 10 years ago, he built this platform that solved a really important, it's a B2B product, really important business problem for someone. And it looks like it's from 1995. And he just sold his business with that same crappy UI. And it just works, right? Because at some point, if you're solving a high enough problem, user experience doesn't become an issue, but people mostly expect it, and that's something that you can set you aside from your competition as well. And it also depends on the type of customer that you're servicing. And finally, you need to work with the right team and optimize your team for execution. Otherwise, you will not be able to satisfy your customer needs fast enough. If you have, I don't know how many of you are outsourcing, how many of you have internal teams, being able to find the right experts, the right people who are also executing on the right problems and are actually doing it well and delivering on time and on budget, that's a hard thing to do. But if you are not able to work with the right team, the product side is going to suffer. Now, when you find the exact target market that is willing to use your product on a regular basis and is also willing to pay you for it, you have found product market fit. That's the definition. You now have found the formula for acquiring customers in a cost-effective ways, and they are also willing to pay you to use your product or service. And the funny part is that most entrepreneurs think and hope that their product market fit journey is going to look like this, a straight line to success. And it's only going to take up to 6 months to get there. How many of you did that? Me, all the time, right? Like we're so optimistic when we're coming up with our ideas. But the reality is that this is what your path is going to look like. And it usually will take more than 1 to 2 years to reach. Here you see the frequent pivots that you might have to do. Some would be small, some would be large. Most of your pivots, hopefully, will be small. And with small pivots, you will be focused on optimizing your product for retention, making sure that your customers are coming back and using your product on a regular basis. It's all about understanding what new features and improvements to your product and functionality would make the product stickier, so more and more of your existing customers use your product on a regular basis and also recommend and refer new users to you. The big pivots are the most painful, the most time consuming, and the most expensive. This is where you might realize that you need to target a different customer segment or a different industry, or you might realize that you need to solve a totally different problem altogether. Hopefully, you won't have to make more than a few big pivots, but it is totally normal and expected for early stage companies to be able to do that. The key is to learn quickly and pivot before you go in the wrong direction for too long, because that is very, very expensive. You want to be able to figure out what you're doing as quickly as possible. And that's where iterations and quick pivots are really important. And we'll actually dive into the process of how we're going to do this in the second part of the presentation. Now, who can tell me, why is it important to get to product market fit quickly? Type your answer in the chat. Why is that such an important milestone? Or you could just unmute yourself and say it, because we're a small group. Okay, that's the only way to sustain. Yeah. Who else?
Yeah, so I actually worked at a startup previously, and we assumed that we had product market fit. And so we went from product market fit to go to market. But obviously, when you kind of skip the product market fit phase, then you kind of go too deep, you spend too much. And it just so happened that we actually raised before finding product market fit. And there was just so many issues. It's really hard to backtrack once you make that assumption.
Okay. Yes, so reaching product market fit and finding it for real is actually a great milestone, an important milestone, because that means that you have figured out a repeatable way of acquiring customers in a cost-effective way, and that you are now ready to scale your business. When you find product market fit, in my opinion, is when you have really become the business, right? You're now sustainable, that you now have a fire that is burning. And if you ever wanted to raise venture capital money, in my opinion, now is the time to do it. Because if you wanted to grow quicker, you've already figured out the formula to be able to do that. But a lot of people want to raise money way before this, right? And so if you do that, having a lot of speed doesn't actually help you when your process, or when you're in the wrong, if your process is not all figured out, because you're going to go faster in the wrong direction, which is not what you want. And so that's why, to me, this is such an important milestone to get to. But to get to product market fit faster, you need to increase what I call product velocity in your startup. And contrary to the name, product velocity is not just about building the product quickly, which is what most people think. Product velocity is the CEO's ability to align the entire startup team to focus on the right goals at the right time, so you can quickly and efficiently learn who is the exact target market that's willing to use your product on a regular basis and is also willing to pay you for it. It's about your entire team, your tech, your marketing, your sales, your business development, and so on, being able to work together and execute quickly in an iterative way to actually build a business around the product idea, and not just building a great product, but to actually build a business around the product. And that involves that your company being able to iterate both on the product and the market side at exactly the same time. So most people iterate so much on the product, right? They build this perfect thing in their mind, and then they go looking for the customers. Now they're going to go and try to sell it or try to market it. And if you hit it wrong if you didn't get it right the first time, right, or perfectly, and now you go to start market it and you got it wrong, now you may have to redo your product. You realize that there's so many things that are not ready for the way you assumed it was going to be. So when you are iterating both on the product and the market side at exactly the same time, that saves you a lot of energy and effort because you know exactly who your target customer is, what their needs are, and you're building products directly with them, for them at exactly the same time. And so you're almost doing sales and marketing and business development and building the product at exactly the same time. And in order for you to achieve that, you need to structure your teams in a different way than traditionally being done. So instead of having siloed teams of sales, marketing, business development, tech, QA, and analytics, this is what traditionally is being done. What I'm recommending that you do is you have smaller teams where both the product and the market people can work on the full life cycle of the product. So your sales, your marketing, your business development on the market side, your product managers, developers, QA, analytics, working together to have full visibility into the entire product life cycle and be able to focus on what matters and iterate a lot faster. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. Very, very important, because I think even if you take some of these lean strategies that a lot of people teach, right? And you don't do this, you will always move slower. You need to be able to increase your product velocity and being able to do both at the same time. So what is the process for reaching product market fit quickly? To do this, we need to understand these two core pillars that are also a part of my product development process that I teach entrepreneurs. The first one is learn early, learn often, and learn cheap. And the second one is executing ideas the lean way. Learning quickly is really important because the faster you learn something, the faster you will learn if you are headed in the right direction. You, of course, don't want to spend a ton of time and money going in the wrong direction. And what's the difference between the classic versus the lean way of building products? Let's first consider the classic way, and then we'll look at the lean way. In the classic way, you come up with your idea, you get excited about the possibilities, and you start painting the picture in your head about how this new shiny functionality will change everything for the business. If only I had this feature, if only I had this, right? How many of you have done that? I do it all the time because this is how we're wired. We are wired to think that there's something missing, and that the reason why we don't have customers buying from us is because this feature is missing. Or if we only build this, then we would be in a better spot. And then the more you think about the possibilities, the more incredible and flawless your idea becomes, and the more excited that you get. Well, what do? Of course, you put all of the resources behind building this amazing functionality that will change everything. You spend 2 to 6 months to a year building in secret this because you don't actually want anyone to steal your brilliant idea. And then you launch. So you've just committed 6 months to a year or even more of time, money, and resources, and then you get feedback. And you may have hit it exactly on a nail. Maybe it is an amazing success that you've imagined in your head, but most often what happens is that you discover that not many people buy, or it wasn't a problem worth solving, or you built the wrong solution, or so many ors. This approach is like shooting arrows at a target with blinders on. It's big risk, it's high risk, it's a big bet, it's slow to market, has zero customer validation, and it is very, very expensive. So on the other hand, we have lean, which uses scientific methodology of hypothesis, test, learn, revise to discover what works with a lot less waste. In a lean process, every single brilliant idea that you have is actually a hypothesis. It is an assumption that has to be proven right or wrong by talking to customers and getting insightful feedback, so you can learn whether your hypothesis is valid or if it needs to be revised. And then you create a new hypothesis that needs to be tested again. And everything drops into a lean development cycle. Hypothesis, test, learn, revise, hypothesis, test, learn, revise. And the goal of your team is to minimize the total time through the loop by learning as quickly as possible. This word learning comes up over and over and over again. We discussed the importance of learning quickly. The faster you learn something, the faster you will learn if you had it in the wrong or the right direction. So basically, in a lean way of building products, your startup is a series of well-designed experiments that you are constantly testing so you can adjust your path to success. And the key, this is really, really important. The smaller your experiments are, the faster you can test and learn whether something is working or not. So instead of taking this long approach to figure out whether something is going to work or not, we are taking lots and lots of small steps to get to success faster. And I hope you can see how these two pillars and why these two pillars are necessary to getting to success faster without wasting time and effort going in the wrong direction. And I want you to think about how you can leverage these two pillars to get to product market fit faster. How can you minimize your learning time? How can you build less code? How can you launch faster? How can you make your team more efficient at executing? Because all of these things help you iterate a lot faster. It'll help you learn a lot faster so you can reach product market fit faster. So now I'm going to break down the actual process that I use and teach that will allow you to learn early, learn often, and learn cheap so you can efficiently iterate through the product development process and optimize your team so they execute like a well-oiled machine. So the TechSpeak 10-step process is a 10-step process, and I've actually color-coded it so that you can see what part of the process is the market and what part is the product. And as you can see, validate is the first step. We're going to talk about and dive into each one of them, is the entire market side, okay? So let's dive into it. Validate. So this is where you will refine all of your ideas. Okay, validation will help you identify the exact target customer for each one of your ideas, validate that the customer problems are really big, and also refine them so that to make sure that it is a painkiller idea. It's not enough to have good ideas for your products and features and functionalities. Every one of your ideas must solve painkiller problems and not be vitamins. Because if people just want what you're building but don't actually need it, you will always have a much harder time getting customers to use and pay for your products and services. The number one reason why products and features fail to be adopted, it's not because they couldn't be built. Yes, it's hard to build stuff, but it is even harder to build stuff that no one uses, right? It's because no one wanted them in the first place. And a lot of people make the mistake, if they do validation at all, is to only do validation at the beginning when they're coming up with their idea. What I'm saying is that every single idea for a new feature or functionality, no matter how large or small, before you build it, has to go through a validation process, because that will help you really understand if you're solving a painkiller problem or a level 4 or 5 problem. And is this functionality going to add to the overall value of your product so your customers would be delighted and actually happy and willing to pay for it? And you would refine your ideas through a process called customer development. Customer development validation is not about putting together a few surveys or doing focus groups. To get these types of valuable insights, you have to follow a very detailed hypothesis testing process by conducting one-on-one interviews with your potential customers. And these interviews are designed to remove the guesswork and assumptions from all of your ideas before you build them. So founders always tell me, Nelly, I talk to customers all the time. I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't need to do validation, right? And because I already talked to everyone that I needed to talk to. But if your questioning is not aligned with specific hypotheses that you want to test, then you're missing out on a lot of nuances and gems that can help you refine your understanding of the problem and therefore help you build the best solution that addresses those problems. Imagine this, you have a product with 5 types of customers, right? And they all have the same problem, but the way they experience that problem is different because of maybe the type of business they're in or the stage of the business or whatever else, right? And wouldn't it be nice to know how they experience that problem from their perspective? And so when you're building that product, you're not guessing what's the best solution. You can intentionally make decisions of how you're going to address all the different types of your customers that you have. And that's what validation allows you to do. Proper and focused customer discovery will prevent you from building technology for technology's sake. Over the years, I've probably witnessed millions of lines of code that were written that were never used by people. And customer development will also allow you to understand how to market and sell to your customers, how to acquire customers, your sales and business model, and so much more. Again, validation, in my opinion, is probably the most important step in the product development process, because it will literally help you define the market in the product market fit scenario that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. Okay, let me run through these quickly, and then we can get into the Q&A, unless you guys have questions. Questions? You're all with me? Yes.
Just a quick, I have a question. I found customer conversations can be tough because I'm talking to lawyers that I know, and when I tell them an idea, they're like, "Yeah, that's great, that's awesome," and then when I go to show them the product, it's different. Like when money's involved, it's different. And I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Absolutely. And so customer discovery is really tough. You need to be able to ask the right questions in the right way. So you're never asking them, "Do you like this product? Will you use it?" The answer is they will always lie to you, right? And so your ability to be able to really find those level 12 out of 10 problems is your ability to be able to interview people efficiently and effectively. And so when you should never be asking, "Will you buy this?" Right? You should actually get them to pay for it or pre-sell the product for you to know if this actually is something that they're going to buy for real. And then I think a lot of the other mistake that a lot of people make is leading people into actually agreeing with whatever it is that they want to build. And so if you're asking leading questions, you're not going to get the answers that you want, right? Here, it's all about discovering something that you didn't know and understanding and improving your understanding of the problem to understand, is this is worth solving, and is this something that they would pay for? Okay. This is an art. This is the hardest thing to do. And as a technical person with every resource at my disposal, I never move anywhere until I do this validation step. Okay. All right. So step number 2 is clickable prototype. So here is where you will refine your solution. So now you've understood the problem that you're solving, large or small. Now you need to figure out how to solve that problem. Now you need to build something or build a solution, right? And when I say a solution, it doesn't mean that it has to be some kind of technology, right? Maybe it's a service. It could be anything at all. And you have to be scrappy here because you're still guessing. What we need to realize is that when we're building products, we're building user interfaces, everything is a guess. And the more you can remove the guesswork from the process, the cheaper it is going to be for you, because you're going to be much closer to the right answer, if there's such a thing, right? Then have to redoing it later. So now in prototypes, you're going to be refining your solution. And instead of jumping into code, which by the way is a way of prototyping, but it is the most expensive way to do so, clickable prototypes is what I'm telling you to do, because they're on the other side of the cost spectrum. Not only is refining clickable solutions using clickable prototypes cheaper and faster than writing code, prototypes will allow you to test multiple solutions before you write code. Remember, it is a lot cheaper and faster to rapidly change prototypes than it is to rewrite code. And just guessing what solution will resonate with your customers will always result in rewriting code later and take more time. Some of the tools, Adobe XD, Figma, Sketch, Marvel App, Envision App, there's so many tools, and it's such a simple thing to add into your process that most people go from idea to code, which in my process you see is step number 8. That will prevent you from a lot of guesswork up front. Step number 3 and 7 is where you're going to plan your MVP. MVP stands for minimal viable product. So you want to be able to define what is going to be the smallest thing that I can build based on the prototype that you've built in step number 2. Okay. Most people, when they look at MVPs, is they say, well, we're going to reduce the number of features from, let's say, 20 to 4. But I'm saying it's not enough. Have you ever wondered how the same exact project can be estimated to cost $10,000, $50,000, $150,000, and all 3 estimates could be completely legitimate? Think about that. How does that happen? And it's because the details of what and how you build something matters a lot. You must plan your MVPs based on your time and your cost constraints so you can launch quickly and inexpensively, and don't build more than you have to. And in order for this to work, your development teams, whether they're in-house or outsourced, they need to be trained in how to build products in this way. Your team needs to understand how to make decisions from the learn early, learn often, learn cheap perspective. And most technical people, unfortunately, are very, very uncomfortable in doing this. They want to build the perfect solution that scales to millions of users, or use that shiny new technology that they want to learn and get experience in, and not necessarily because that's what's best for your business at this moment in time. So what you need to do is figure out what's the minimal viable thing that you can launch with as quickly as possible, and then refine, scale, and iterate from there. And if you're not working with teams who know this process, it's very important for the CEO, because they set the strategy. The CEO should learn this process, make it a part of your company culture, and then train everyone on your team to also to know this process. And when you hire new people, you need to hire them with this process in mind, because this is the only way that you can actually make it work. So I just onboarded a team of 10 people because they used to build software the traditional way, and now they wanted to transition to the lean and agile process. And they had their CEO, CTO, their product and project managers, developers, and QA all join so that they can learn the process together. Remember at the beginning, I told you that you guys should restructure your teams in a certain way, right? So that they're all working together and they all understand the process from each other's perspective. Everyone on the team needs to know the same process and know the job that everyone else is doing, so that you can focus and both iterate on the market side and the product side together. And that's why, for you to be able to move quickly, your entire team needs to do all of these steps together. Okay. And by the way, not everyone is well suited for this type of culture of constant learning, experimenting, and uncertainty. It is hard. And if you already have a team member, and you find that even after training, certain people are not a fit, you might have to make a difficult decision to replace them with someone who is. It is very, very important to create a company culture with this mindset, okay? Making decisions on the tech side to go lean is very, very difficult, okay? And everybody has to make decisions from the learn early, learn often, learn cheap mindset. Steps 8 and 9 is all about managing the coding and the deployment process to your customers. So this is where you will use agile project management to make sure that you can deploy code quickly and efficiently. How many of you use agile process? Okay, so if you traditionally, agile is 2 weeks release cycles, right? But what I want to do is challenge you to reduce that cycle to 1 week, to multiple time a day releases at some point. Because the sooner you launch, right, the quicker you're iterating, the more you're learning. There's a company, how many of you heard of Etsy? Etsy? Okay, so they were a company that started in New York, and they used a lot of these processes that I'm sharing with you. And at 450 developers, they were making 250 releases a day. Imagine the amount of data that they were able to collect, and how optimized their process was, and how much learning they were able to do on a daily basis, right? This is something that we can all aspire to, but the faster you are moving, the faster you collecting data, the smaller your mistakes become, right? Because you have a ton of experiments that are running at the same time, and you're learning really quickly, right? I'm sharing that story not so you can get there today, but to know that it is possible to do that, okay? Finally, step number 10 is all about setting up behavior analytics, where you can, instead of guessing, can use data to make product improvement decisions. This is where you will need to implement analytics and start to collect user behavior data that can help you learn how your users use your product, what features and functionalities they use the most, what delights them and what makes them frustrated, what brings them back to using your application over and over again, and why they might not be coming back as often as you'd like. All of these data points will help you make decisions on which one of your existing features needs to be improved and how, what new features and functionalities would make your product stickier, so more and more of your existing customers use your product on a regular basis, and also recommend and refer new users to you. Data-driven decision-making to improving your products is absolutely transformational, because instead of guessing what exact features to focus on to get more users to use your product, you will actually have data that will inform you on what next functionality that you should be testing, and implementing, which of course, again, prevents you from spending a lot of resources and time building the wrong things. So here in step 1, we're validating the idea's riskiest assumptions with a small set of our customers. This is where we're talking with customers one-on-one. And we want to be able to identify the riskiest assumptions and quickly test them and validate them. Here in step 10, we're now scaling our learning with a bigger subset of our customers. And from the data that you collect, you will get ideas on how to improve your product. And those ideas, for a lot of people, are gold, right? They're like, oh my gosh, we can do this and this and this and this and this. And what they do is they take those ideas and put it into step number 8, where we need to implement this as quickly as possible. But what should we do instead? Unmute your mic and tell me. What should we do instead? What are these ideas that you're getting from these on how to improve your product? What are these called? Yes, Alexi.
Well, you need to validate before you go and put it into step 8 and 9.
Because the idea is called what? Starts with an H.
Hypothesis?
Yes, it's a hypothesis, right? It's an assumption. Nothing that you're doing is actually true. Everything is a hypothesis. It's an assumption. And so you put it back into step number 1 so that you can understand the nuances. It doesn't mean that your initial hunch is false, right? Doing validation doesn't mean that your ideas are bad. What we want to do is take your ideas and validate that they're high enough of a pain point and understand the nuances around every one of our ideas so that we can understand the best way to solve those problems. Does that make sense? And this is how you go through the 10 steps over and over and over again until you reach product market fit and beyond, if you want to continue to stay innovative as a company. Okay. And this is the key. Remember earlier, I told you our startups are a series of experiments that we're running. The smaller your experiments are, the faster you're going through these 10 steps. So you want to be able to test a lot of experiments, and they're so tiny, you're going through these steps really fast. Even though it's a 10-step process, you're going through the steps really, really fast. Okay? Now, I already just told you this. So now let me ask you another question. Who can tell me what we can use to test whether our hypotheses are true or false? Right? The beauty of hypotheses is that they have they can be true or false. But what are we going to do to be able to test them?
Customer interviews.
Customer what?
Customer interviews.
Customer interviews. Okay, but how are we going to know whether it's true or false? We need what? Something that starts with an M.
Money.
Money? Yes, we always need money, but in order to know that something is going to be true or false, what do we need to do? We need to measure something. So we need to measure success using metrics. Okay, we need to know metrics will allow us to help define what success will look like for us. And what success means to me and my company is different than what success means to you and your company, right? Yeah, and how quickly you're going to get to that success is also defined by you. So you need to be able to define what success is and the time frame until you reach success. Without metrics, you're going to be running blind, iterating really quickly and going nowhere. I can give you an example of two co-founders that just recently joined my program. For 2 years, they were going from accelerator to accelerator to accelerator, solving a really interesting problem, but they were going and trying different things, but because they didn't set metrics, they just basically at the end of 2 years burnt out. They didn't know when they should stop their experiments. And metrics will help us do that, okay? And by the way, if you're not hitting your metrics, what are you going to do?
New hypothesis.
New hypotheses, yeah. But what does that mean? What are we going to do? We set a metric. What is that called when you set new hypotheses?
New goals.
New goals, right? You pivot, you change direction. It's a way for you to ask questions, right? Maybe the way you defined your success needs to be refined. It doesn't mean that you've defined it wrong, right? But if you set a time frame and a goal to reach within a specific time and it's not working, it doesn't mean that you need to stop doing that. It just means maybe you need to ask a question and maybe refine that goal, right? Because every single day you're learning something new, and getting those data points will help you be much more smart about maybe even setting that goal, because setting that goal is also a hypothesis, right? So if you're not hitting your metrics, those are your signs that you need to check in, that you need to change something, that you need to maybe refine, or you need to revisit and understand why you're not hitting those metrics. And something either on the product or the what?
Customer, different customers.
Market.
The market. Yes,
yeah.
the product or the market, right? So you need to understand that we're iterating on both sides at the same time. And so it could be either the product or the market or both that needs to be refined. That's what metrics will allow us to do. Make sense? Okay, so you are, here's also a screenshot with product market fit baseline metrics. So these are some expectations based on the different business models that you can use as a baseline to know what's expected in the industry. Okay, we obviously don't have time today to go through all the details. This is something that I cover in my other training, but this is having baseline metrics, and you may need to research what are some baseline metrics in your industry for your types of products, etc. But having baseline metrics also gives you confidence of like, okay, I want to be able to, this is the standard of what success looks like for my industry. Okay, so having baseline metrics is really important. All right, so this process will allow you to learn early, learn often, learn cheap. We're optimizing our team and process so you're not spending too much time and money going in the wrong direction. And the more tighter your team and your process are, the better you're executing. It shortens your learning time through this hypothesis, test, learn, revise loop that I mentioned at the beginning. And of course, by learning early and often, you are much more likely to hit success and do it faster and reach product market fit faster. And this is an eye-opening slide for a lot of people, how much you can save in product development costs if you use the learn early, learn often, learn cheap process. A lot of people are motivated by money. So I included this slide. And if you are interested in how I came up with these numbers, just go to my website, techspeak.co, click on free classes, and there's a webinar, an on-demand webinar there called How to Cut Your Product Development Costs by Up to 50%. And I took some very conservative assumptions. If you've ever built software, you know how expensive it is. So I took very conservative assumptions. And if you want to know how I came up with these numbers, just go watch this. But it's $124,000 for one developer per release. And the numbers go astronomical the more people that you have on your team. Okay, so I'm showing you this because a lot of people misunderstand that, like, if you are moving slow, if you're building too much, if you are not being focused on what it is that you need to do, you're not only not reaching product market fit, you're also leaving a lot of money on the table, money that you could, especially for bootstrap founders, reinvest into the business, right? Hire more people, move faster, right? Like, this is money that you're throwing away simply because you just don't do this process. Make sense? Okay, so let's do a recap of what you guys have learned so far. First, reaching product market fit quickly is really an important milestone, because that now it means you're a real business, right? You're now ready to scale. To use the lean way of building products, to learn faster and iterate to success, to validate and prototype all of your ideas so you don't build more than you need, to optimize your MVPs, to reduce the cost and time of development so you can launch faster, to implement an efficient agile framework so you can release code more often than every 2 weeks and learn faster, and to use data-driven decision-making to improving your products. And this is where you guys will tell me what has been the most valuable for you so far. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all or what combination of the 6. And it's also your action steps, right, for what you're going to do, hopefully post this webinar. I'm very action oriented, and I want you to take 1 or 2 things that you can start to implement in your startup after this. So let me know what has been the most valuable for you so far. Just type it in the chat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all or what combination of the 6. Great. 3, validate and prototype. Excellent. That's a good takeaway. Excellent. Okay. So additional resources for those of you who are interested. I have classes, free classes on my website that you can go and check out. I also have TechSpeak for Entrepreneurs Academy. It's a 10-step process that I've just shared with you, broken down into a blueprint. So if you guys want to have a focused training on this stuff and how to implement this, feel free to check it out. And in your download, there is an exclusive offer just for you guys. If you're interested, it's a special discount. This is where you can download the workbook and do some of the work as well. There's a lot of summaries of everything that we talked about today. All right, so here's my email address, nelly@techspeak.co. Feel free to reach out, or let's go into the Q&A. We have about 7 minutes. Just I think we can just unmute, right? And do that.
Yeah. I have a quick question, Nelly. How long is the average time to take to get to product market fit from like what you've seen, and does it depend like the type of company?
There is no such thing. I think if you are taking the best process, right, to be able to do this as efficiently, there's so many variables. Your team, your ability to understand and find the right customers, your ability to sell, your ability to build a product efficiently. There's just a lot of variables for you to be able to do this quickly. And so there is no such thing as here's an average time for us to find product market fit. It also depends on the problem. I earlier shared with you that there was a guy who had the crappiest product, but had a really high pain point. For them to be able to reach product market fit would be very quickly, right? If you follow this methodology, so most people build the product first, then go focus on the market. What I teach entrepreneurs, especially in the early days, before you build the product, if you start with the market, this is what I do and teach everyone to do, but it's not always an option for people who already have a product. If you can at all, start with the market, go find your customers, identify that level 12 out of 10 problem. For a lot of my students who started that way, they were able to pre-sell, get letters of intent before they even build the product with just the interviews, right? The validation and a clickable prototype. I had and this is a really great example. And you can kind of see a lot of nuances of what happens when you find that product market fit earlier, right? It doesn't mean that you can scale this, but I'm going to share Alex's example because it's so good. So Alex was an entrepreneur. He did some validation before he started working with me. He did more validation, got really focused on the core problem, built a clickable prototype, and then because he was a non-technical founder, he was working with an outsourced team that had troubles internally, and so they were taking their time. And during that time, I was like, okay, Alex, you have 3 weeks before you get started. Why don't you go sell your product, which is a clickable prototype, this, right? Like, and he was very, very uncomfortable in doing this, but of course we worked through that, and he got 7 letters of intent of potential, and he was in a B2B marketing space. So in the B2B space, it's a lot easier to do, business to business, for those of you who don't know. And then he got those 7 letters of intent and, of course, invested into the product. But his early version of the product was an Excel spreadsheet. So he couldn't build the product fast enough, but he realized that, hey, you know what? The value that the customers want is this way of visualizing their data. And he could do that as an early product in Excel. And so out of the 7 people that he got letters of intent with, he got 2 paying customers to do that, right? So these are early signs that you're talking to the right audience, right? And then you can potentially scale that. But I think if you're not focused enough, and I think a lot of people go too broad in the beginning, they want to be able to service different types of customers. But if you talk to one type of customer and perfect that, then it's a lot easier for a smaller team to scale, right, into other verticals. So hopefully that helps. Danny, go for it.
Hey Nelly, thanks for your presentation. It was awesome. I have a question. So you were talking about metrics and data-driven approach to finding product market fit. My take on this, or maybe a question, is it necessary to operate in this numbers space kinda? Because what I found is just talking to people and really understanding your customer might bring a lot of value in itself without even worrying about data and metrics. Just talk to your users, see if they are willing to pay for this solution, and go from there. So where do numbers play into this?
A great question. So in the beginning, it's way more valuable to talk to customers, way more valuable. But as you have a product, right, so a lot of the times people will say one thing, but they do something completely different. And so the reason why step number 10 is so important is because you want to be able to actually confirm how people use the product, where they focus the most, what's the most valuable, and you can corroborate that with, of course, with your one-on-one conversations. They are not exclusive. You should be doing both, right? And so a lot of the product-driven or metrics-driven decisions that you're making help you uncover things that you may have not known to even ask your customers, because they may be saying one thing, doing something completely different. A lot of people discover use cases inside their product, because people, if it's a product that does one thing and people use it in a different way to solve their problems, right? Then you can uncover that by looking at the usage. And then you can say, well, no, if they're using it this way, there's a much better way to solve this, right? But before you make that assumption, you go back, talk to your customers, and you can learn. So like, why are you doing this? And what's the reason for why, etc. right? And so you can get some more insights, and then you start to bake those insights into the product. It's a combination. There's a lot of value in both. And the time when a lot of people scale and they deprioritize the one-on-one conversations is when I think people lose their connection to the actual customers and users, and it has a lot of negative impact on their business.
Yeah, thank you. Makes sense.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question on the pre-selling and finding early adopters. So, my ideal customer is a B2B SaaS, and I'm just curious, is it unheard of to find early adopters that are like at that 100 million ARR mark, or do you kind of need to start on the lower end, like try to find software companies that are still of smaller teams that are maybe more willing to try new tools?
It depends on what problem you're solving. So the higher up market you go, the problems that they are having are very, very different than smaller teams, right? And so if your goal is to sell to higher end customers, I wouldn't talk to to smaller teams. That's where I'm starting, right? It depends. If your goal is to this is a product that could be used by everybody. Eventually, you can start with smaller teams, but you also need to realize that bigger teams have very different problems. The way you would solve that same problem could be completely different with them. So you can do like I'm in a co-founder in a well-being startup, and we're in the enterprise space, and we found a customer because of our unique situation who actually paid us to build the product with them, right? And we own the IP and all that stuff, but they paid us to do this. And so you can even do this with enterprises if you have the right relationships. It's a lot harder, right? But the problems that you're solving, you have to understand that even, let's say, professional people, let's say you're building a dating service, right? Just in as simple as saying, this is a dating app, Bumble, for example, right? Where women make the first move. But women in New York City are different than in the middle of the United States. They have different needs, different wants. And so if you build a product just for women in certain areas, right, there's already a lot of differences. And imagine now you're talking about companies with different size teams and different revenues. They have very different problems, which is, I think, a lot of people it's like talking about getting to product market fit faster is not really understanding the nuances of these differences. Think about your own business and where you were when you were one team, a team of 5, team of 10, 20, right? It just, the business becomes very different and the problems become very different. And the way they want you to solve those problems will be different as well. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, very much so.
Anyone else? We have a few more minutes and then I have to jump off.
Do you need to hire a designer for clickable prototype?
I teach people how to do it yourself, right? So a lot of the reasons why, so I think at the end of the day, if it's going to go to customers, you'll end up hiring a designer. But I think being able to wireframe, learn that skill yourself, building clickable prototypes as a founder will help you, especially in the early days when your team is small, to be able to do that yourself. You can go validate and test and do all of the stuff outside of your technical team. And now you have the freedom to be able to, oh, I have this idea, let me go validate it, right? And you can do that on your own without having to be dependent on someone else. And then when, of course, that idea becomes, oh, this has legs, now let's take this and design it properly. Then you hire a designer. So there's many different ways, depending on what you're doing, that you can do.
And maybe follow-up question, do you also do this stuff for, let's say you already have a running product, but you want to do a new feature? Do you still follow the same process, just like clickable prototype, even though it might look like completely different than your website or app?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Yeah, I say I never skip any of these 10 steps. Even if you have like the team that I told you that is an established team, they have a team of 10 people. I don't want them to skip any of the steps. Every time, sometimes you may skip a step in the design, right? I think in my process, step 7 is design. Sometimes you can skip design because you can reuse a lot of the elements, but you still have to design it, right? So it's very quick. A lot of the times you don't have to start a new design process, but you should have a checkbox that at least I've done this, right? And that's going to ensure that you're not skipping anything, and eventually will pay the price. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out if I can help you guys in any way.
Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this, Nelly. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.